Hello, and welcome to a new movie recap video. Today, I'm going to tell you the story of the movie Emily the Criminal, an enthralling American crime thriller film released in 2022. It marks the impressive feature directorial debut of John Patton Ford, who also penned the screenplay. The movie stars Aubrey Plaza in the lead role as Emily Benedetto, alongside talented actors Theo Rossi, Megalyn Echikunwoke, and Gina Gershon in supporting characters. The story begins when a woman is conducting a job interview at a company. That woman is named Emily. She is a hard worker because she has to pay off a debt of $70,000 on her college, which is known to have stalled. Emily also went to jail when she was in college because she abused her boyfriend, so his lover called the police. That's why it's hard for Emily to take jobs. Then, he left from there. Furthermore, Emily also has a main job, namely being a food delivery person for a catering company. But her salary is not enough to pay off all her debts. After returning from delivering food at the office, Emily, who is returning home, suddenly met her catering coworker who asked Emily to replace her on the night shift. In return, Emily was given a job link by her colleague. At first, Emily was a bit hesitant when it was said that her job offer was not a legal company, but Emily agreed to the offer. Back home, Emily also didn't live alone. She and her two siblings lived there. Then, when she found out that it was already working hours, Emily immediately rushed out of the house. After some time, she decided to wait for the night orders on the side of the road while painting on his paper because drawing is Emily's hobby. Not only that, she also had time to remember the job offer this afternoon from his colleague, so she immediately called the number indicated by his colleague. It didn't take long. She also received a message back from that number ordering Emily to come immediately the next day to a certain location. Then, because there were no orders, Emily decided to hang out with her old friends. There, Emily also confided that she now did not have enough salary to pay off all her debts. So, Emily asked her friend named Liz for a job. Of course, as a close friend, Liz promised to give her a decent job, which is related to her hobby of painting. After that, they got drunk on the streets. The scene continues the next day where Emily visits an office, where she will have another job interview. At first, Emily thought that in that place she would be given a lot of classic questions as usual. But in fact, this was a little different because the people who came there seemed to already know what they were going to do. Even one named Joseph didn't want to talk much. He then asked for Emily's SIM card and immediately did a photo shoot, even though Emily had not been told what the photo was for. Then, after all the administrative processes have been carried out, Joseph explained how the workflow here. We can find out if it turns out Emily's job will be as a fake buyer, aka an accomplice in carding crimes. At a glance, carding is an illegal job where someone copies someone else's ATM card and can take money from that account as they please. Of course, there are some conditions that Emily must know. One of which is that Emily is only allowed to buy goods at one shop once a week because it is possible that their work can be tracked by the shop, which allows them to be caught at any time. But the pay is also quite attractive, namely $200 per hour. Of course, Emily accepted all the risks, even though at first she was hesitant because she wasn't sure if the car could work. Then, after everything was explained, Emily and the other workers were immediately sent into the field. After some time, Emily arrived at a fairly large electronics store. This time, Emily was assigned to buy one TV for $2,000. Because this was the first time for Emily, of course, she looked very nervous and tense when making payments at the cashier until Emily forgot if she brought a hat that she hadn't paid for. So the security guard came to her. In the parking lot, Joseph pulled the hat back, but thank God, because the first mission was successful. Joseph immediately gave the first $200 to Emily. Not only that, Emily was also given a cell phone and charger so Joseph could contact her again for the next mission. Then, the next day, Emily returned to work as usual, delivering food to a company for employees. However, because the elevator was in trouble, she and her partner had to climb the emergency stairs. As a result, the food was slightly destroyed. Damn it! After finishing delivering the food, Emily went to the toilet. While cleaning her back, she also opened the cell phone that Joseph gave her. But there were no calls, so she threw the cell phone into the trash can. However, not long after that, suddenly the cell phone rang, indicating the next call had come. Instantly, Emily immediately received the call. Even at lunchtime when she should still be working, Emily was desperate to be allowed to go. Of course, she knew that she would definitely get suspended, but she herself didn't seem to care about that. After some time, Emily was picked up again by Joseph using a van, where he explained that now Emily would make a sizable transaction. He had to buy a luxury BMW car from a fence. But the challenge is that she only has 8 minutes after the card is swiped because the shop will immediately check the account with the bank to convince the shop owner. If it takes more than 8 minutes, Emily will definitely be in trouble. Of course, Emily, who was already wet, couldn't help but have to do it. She didn't think much and went straight into the shop that Joseph had told her about. Arriving at the shop, Emily's expression was very stiff and tense because 2 men asked her about car transactions, and because she wanted to finish it in a hurry. Emily didn't even want to see her car first. Hearing this statement at first, the shop owner was a little doubtful, but Emily managed to convince the shop. So after swiping the card, Emily then looked at the clock to measure how much time she had left. But unfortunately, suddenly the shop wanted Emily to fill out a form first before taking her car. Of course, it took more time. So when Emily was ushered into the car, suddenly a shop employee was called by the owner and asked Emily to return to the office to confirm the bogus payment. A second later, the employee immediately beat Emily, but Emily immediately stepped on the gas and ran away from there. A chase ensued and suddenly a truck stopped to block the road. So Emily, who was followed from behind, immediately got out of the car and sprayed chili liquid in the employee's face. After being freed from the chase, Emily immediately gave the car to Joseph and immediately asked for payment worth $2,000. Emily herself didn't know that this job was very, very dangerous. It even made her nose bleed. Joseph, who was sorry, then made an offer to take Emily home. And when he got to the front of the house, Joseph again offered to help make her a nice pack. Emily also agreed. Okay, even though at first she was annoyed, but her condition continued to improve because Joseph was so concerned about her. The house also said that he was going to buy several housing units which House F would later rent out, thus making the business an ongoing investment. The following day, Emily returned to work as usual, but suddenly she was called by the boss who asked for further information about her reckless action at lunchtime. Emily also received a suspension for 3 days, but she was not at a loss. Then suddenly, Joseph called her again after arriving at Joseph's office. Emily then asked Joseph for another job. Of course, Joseph didn't hold back this desire. From there, Emily was taught to make a fake ATM card complete with the serial number of the card that Joseph had recorded. Emily also asked how much the fee was, but here Joseph did not immediately tell. Instead, he asked Emily to cash out the goods. She bought up to $5,000 for a week. The requirements are also quite simple. Namely, Emily may not buy goods at the same store within 1 week. She must move from shop to shop so that her actions are not known by other parties. From there, Emily then took her card printing equipment home, including being told where Emily had to sell these items. The next day, Emily immediately took action and bought several items at a shop, then immediately sold them at a low price to a dealer. For several days, Emily continued to carry out these actions, while in the morning, she continued to work as a food delivery person. Of course, this is a very big advantage for Emily. She even bought a safe to store the money she had collected. On one occasion, Liz came back to see her and asked Emily to look after Liz's pet dog for 2 weeks. After a few days, Emily came back to Joseph to give his deposit, and Emily also managed to pocket $10,000 from her work. But apparently Joseph's little action with Emily was not known by Joseph's business partner named Call. Of course, Caldwell became suspicious because Joseph had dared to play behind him and took advantage. Continuing at night, Emily, who was at home, suddenly got a phone call from someone who wanted to buy an item. Then the customer asked friendly that the transaction be made at Emily's house. Of course, this violates the stop of the card world because Emily is not allowed to make transactions at her personal residence. Not long after that, the customer came and sure enough, it wasn't the item he wanted but the money that Emily had been collecting all this time that he took. So it can be said if the robber had been robbed in his own house. It is known that the money that was robbed from Emily's safe was $15,000. Of course, Emily did not remain silent with the electric shock device she had. Emily returned to the robber's car and immediately shocked him with electricity until he fainted. Not only that, Emily also saw the identity card of the robber, so the robber could not run anywhere. Long story short, after successfully taking back what was rightfully hers, Emily came to a Thanksgiving event at Liz's house. There, she was introduced to several famous artists and designers from Liz's company. But not long from there, suddenly Joseph came to the place and immediately became suspicious. Acquainted with Liz, there Joseph also offered that Joseph could be Emily's fake boyfriend because he saw that Emily was poor, as she didn't know many people there. Emily was also told again by Liz that she would soon get a job as an assistant designer. Afterward, Liz contacted her boss and they both looked happy because Emily also wanted a lawful job. After the Thanksgiving event was over, Joseph took Emily home. But not only that, it turned out that Joseph was also asked to stay at Emily's house, and there was a cultural performance between them the next day. After Emily came home from work, Joseph invited her to see the housing units that he would later buy, as if he also wanted to show that he is a man with clear goals and objectives. Emily was certainly very impressed with Joseph and wanted to get to know him further. Since then, Joseph also invited Emily to meet his parents at Joseph's parents' house. Emily was warmly greeted by Joseph's mother, and they laughed and joked with each other at first. But suddenly, uninvited guests came to the house. Yes, it was Carl with his men. Then, when Joseph's mother returned to the kitchen, Carl showed a CCTV footage of one of the shops that Emily often visited to shop. It turned out that Emily had violated the current law by buying goods at the same store twice a week. Of course, the recording had also gone viral in the news. But before they chatted much, suddenly Joseph's mother came. The story continues where Emily goes to Liz's office the next day to take part in an interview. But it wasn't the first interview that she got. Emily was given an explanation in advance about how she would work. Then, when lunch arrived, Emily came back to Joseph. But this time, Joseph was not as usual. His face looked bloody, and he was very angry at that time. Then he asked them to leave there immediately. After arriving at Emily's house, Joseph less than P greater than just said that Joseph had been kicked out of the card business that he had built for 3 years. It is even known that Joseph himself has not received a salary for the last 5 months for some reason. But it is clear that Kalu has been unfair to Joseph. After some debate had passed, Joseph himself immediately had the intention to plunder the carding warehouse where the band notes and unsold goods were. He wanted to rob all the treasure first before Kalal moved it. Of course, that would be done the next day. Then in the morning, when Emily woke up from sleeping with Joseph, who was sleeping together, now Emily also remembered that that day was the last day of the interview with Liz's boss. So Emily immediately went to Liz's office again. But after arriving, Emily felt quite nervous, and sure enough, Emily was again asked about the record of crime she had committed during her college days. Liz's boss then wanted to ask for an explanation of how she initially got into prison. When asked about that, Emily immediately became angry, especially after learning that for the first 6 months she would not be paid. Emily immediately left there and preferred to go to Joseph. After meeting, they immediately rushed to carry out the plan that had been made, namely to take the property in the office. But to their surprise, they only found empty cupboards that were no longer lifeless. No money at all. Not yet losing his head, Joseph continued to go to another office, but the result was still the same. It didn't stop there. Joseph also remembered that he had a joint account with Colin, but unfortunately, 1,000 deer after checking it turns out that Kalal has also taken all the money in the account. And from that moment, Joseph realized that he really had lost everything. Even at the same time, Joseph had also been billed for the down payment for the unit of the house. He was going to buy Joseph, suddenly became silent, and immediately took out his anger at Emily, which of course started with Emily for violating the card shop alias entering the store twice a week. Of course, Emily didn't want to lose either. She also blamed Joseph for allowing Carl to keep taking Joseph's money. But then, after the debate, Emily also brought out her criminal spirit, which could influence Joseph's thinking and mentality. Initially, Joseph suddenly wanted to take revenge on Carl. Then, they intended to come to Carl's residence to reclaim their property. Long story short, night fell. The two of them arrived at Carl's residence. Then, Emily started the action first. Emily came and pretended to be a food order by Carl. After a guard came out, Emily immediately electrocuted him until he fainted. It didn't end there. Emily took the guard's cell phone to contact the other guards. This was done so that the guards in the house went out of the house, so that in the house only one Carl remains. Of course, that will make it easier for Joseph and Emily to beat up Carl. But unfortunately, 1,000 deer, when checked inside Carl's room, was never found. And suddenly, Carl came out and immediately beat Joseph until he fainted helplessly. Emily was left alone. Of course, Carl was no longer there. Fixed. Match for Emily. At first, Emily was cornered, but she suddenly remembered that there was a cutter in her pocket and immediately stabbed Callow until the man was helpless. Things are turning around now, until Emily is finally told that the money is stored in the kitchen refrigerator. Tell me where inside and I'll let you go. I'm gonna count to 3 after taking the money. Emily went back upstairs and gave Carl a cell phone to call an ambulance, not forgetting that he also took Joseph away from there. However, Emily could not find where Joseph's car keys were, while Joseph himself was dying. So with enough weight, Emily decided to pull out of there, leaving Joseph carrying wads of money before the police arrived. Emily then managed to win the money alone. Then, the next day, it was seen that several police officers were raiding Emily's house. But thank God Emily was not there, because she has now gone into seclusion while on vacation at the beach. And at the end of the story, we are shown that Emily is back to karting, though she is now the only boss who is recruiting new members, and the film is over. Subscribe for more videos like this, turn on notifications, and leave a like to help the channel out.